welcome to everyone here to our Amplify Now session with the topic creating opportunities for refugees. How can we collaborate better? Nice to have you all here. I'm especially happy to welcome so many participants to this session and look forward to discussing the topic with all of you. My name is Konstantin and I work for Kiron, and it is my pleasure to moderate the session here today for you. Now, let me briefly introduce a couple of organizational points before we dive into the topic. If you have any technical difficulties or any problems in terms of tech with the Zoom, please contact our tech host. His name is Hannes Krengel, and you can find him in the chat. If you send him a message, he can take care of all your tech issues for you. He's sort of our guardian in the background that everyone runs smoothly. We want to have a safe discussion space here, so please feel free to change your name to a nickname if you want to. Please feel free to switch off your cameras if you want to. Also feel free to leave them on, and feel free to share and actively participate in our discussion. We want to hear from you and are looking forward to it if you feel comfortable. No pressure. Also, any sort of hate speech or trolling will not be tolerated, and you will be kicked out of the meeting accordingly. For your information, this session may be recorded for further documentation. And, now let's see what's going to happen. We'll start with very short inputs by our 4 speakers on the panel today. Then after these inputs, we will break up into different groups in breakout sessions, and we will have 2 questions that we can discuss among the breakout session group. And when we have about 15 minutes left of the session, we will come back together in the main group and report back to discuss with the main group again. You can also at any time send messages through the chat to the hosts. If you have any content questions during the presentations, for example, Hannes and Alice and I will keep an eye on the chat and collect your questions and bring them up at the end. Now, let me introduce our speakers for today. It is my absolute pleasure to have Basma Duchi here with us today. Basma is a master student of development and emergency practice at Oxford Brookes University. She's a holder of a number of scholarships and awards in her field and has extensive experience in working with international NGOs, big and small, UNHCR, UNRWA, only to name a few, mainly in the Lebanon-Syria area. Welcome, Basma.
Thank you.
Then we have Grace Atkinson here with us today from Jussor, an organization that is devoted to creating educational opportunities mainly for Syrian youth. She is the executive director of Jussor and has extensive experience in the field, having worked on projects in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, France, and the Netherlands. Welcome, Grace. So very happy to have you. Then we have Laura Batalla. Laura is a migration policy representative at Hello Europe, and she has many years of experience working in a number of European institutions and is especially committed to bringing advocacy opportunities within European institutions, especially for organizations on the ground. And then we have Gabby Weimer from Paper Airplanes. She's the managing director of Paper Airplanes, and that's an organization that organizes one-on-one mentoring sessions, and in her current role she oversees the program and monitoring, evaluation and partnership development in the Middle East. Welcome everyone, it's very nice to have you. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to give the floor to Basma for her short input presentation. Basma, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello everybody, and very nice to see you and to meet you from all over the world. As my colleague mentioned, I am Basma Duchi. I am a stateless Palestinian refugee who is living in a camp in Lebanon, and at the same time a humanitarian and development practitioner for more than 10 years working with and for refugees. If I want to share from my personal experience about living as a refugee and working with refugees and the importance of education in the life of refugee and the challenges that refugees are facing or suffering nowadays in order to access higher education opportunities, especially for the graduate or undergraduate. living as a refugee and living in a camp really have made me and many of also refugees all around the world, and especially the refugees that I have been working with, made us really very strong and made us also realize the impact and the value of a human suffering, but at the same time also helped us to celebrate our resilience and a lot of opportunities around us, around us in the country with the host communities and also out abroad. It was not an easy journey for me, especially as a refugee, in order to access education or higher education. So it was very difficult most of the time to access schools. We have a lot of issues in the quality of education, the quality sometimes of teachers, and as well the integration possibility with the host community, especially in the public schools and in the public universities or in the university. And it was very hard for me as a refugee also, and for my family, and for a lot also about refugees, to access the opportunities to go to the university because of the fees, because of the criteria, and because of a lot of also other additional requests from the universities, and like I am speaking in Lebanon and outside as well. I get a scholarship, the second prestigious scholarship in the world, achieving the UK scholarship in order to come and study in the UK. It was not an easy journey, but it was really very worth and very rewarding journey. My lessons from my journey is that you have to accept the challenges, but at the first of all, we have to admit that as refugees, we will be facing a lot of challenges in order to access higher education and education opportunities. But we should really accept these challenges. We should be able to learn from these challenges and acknowledge them. And we should also seek support or seek opportunities. This is also sometimes very difficult for a refugee living in a camp, or for a refugee who's facing layers of difficulty in integration. So it's difficult sometimes to search for opportunities. But the important lesson or the important suggestion from myself is to engage a lot with people from your country, from your community, and from also platforms that you are around, in order to discuss these challenges and also to create opportunities or to seek opportunities. And always ask yourself, if I can do it, so others also can be doing it. And when I get the scholarship and when I get the special recognition from the UK Embassy in Lebanon as a refugee, supporting refugees as well, I ask myself, if I am doing this, and if I really was able to take this very highest prestigious scholarship, and I was the only Palestinian refugee from 20 years to get this scholarship, so why other refugees cannot do it? Why especially women and girls as well? So you have to struggle a lot, I understand, but you have also to acknowledge that you have abilities, you have capacities, and you have to understand the points that you should be working in order to improve yourself. So you have to acknowledge and celebrate that your strengths and your resilience, and the points that you have in order to keep you moving forward. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge that you have certain issues that you need to improve in order to also to access higher opportunities. And also here, when I come to the UK, I also have one, and this is very important for any refugee who is also hearing me now. As a refugee working with refugees, I come here in the community, and I volunteered for more than 300 hours for the UK and for its community. And I was recognized and praised by the UK Foreign Office and achieving scholarship for be the top scholar among 1,760 scholars from all over the world who do more than 300 hours of volunteering and support to the community in the UK. And this have helped me a lot to create opportunities to raise awareness about refugees, especially higher education accessibility. So that's it for me. You have to challenge, you have to seek opportunities, and you have to engage and to be open-minded, and don't keep silent, just speak. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Basma, for this very nice input. Now, next up, we have Grace. Grace, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and thank you, Basma, for the lovely kind of introduction to the context and sharing your experiences. I'm gonna, hopefully everyone can see my screen now, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about our work with JSOR. Our mission is investing in Syrian youth for a brighter tomorrow. And we do this through 3 main programs, which is scholarships, refugee education, and entrepreneurships. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an example from each of the different programs that we have. And I'm going to use a kind of something that we call within JSOR the multiplier effect, where we believe that every Syrian child or youth that we invest in makes a substantial difference to their surrounding family and friends, their immediate group. And also that immediate group makes a difference and a change in the community at large. So we call it the multiplier effect. With each person we invest in, they create change within their community. So starting with the university scholarship program, and I know that we have partnership as a theme of what we're discussing here, and we actually have over 80 partners around the world. You can see a couple of them at the bottom, but I'd like to highlight a specific case, which is the story of one of our scholars called George Batan. George Batan gained a scholarship through JSOR and IIT to the US. This is before the times of Trump, so we know everything has changed at the moment. And not only did he graduate top of his class and he was valedictorian, but also in 2015, he ran a campaign for the USA to accept more refugees into the country. And he actually gained 300,000 signatures on a petition and was invited to the White House. And this actually influenced the policy of the presidential office at the time. Also, George Batan founded the organization called Syrian Youth Empowerment, where they've supported 90 Syrians within Syrian refugees as well to apply to universities outside their country of residence. And they have a 50% acceptance rate abroad. So that's around 45 Syrian refugees or displaced people who have managed to go on to higher education because of this initiative. The second example I'd like to draw from our refugee education program, and less than using a specific example, I think I'd like to talk about every single one of the children that we work with. And we notice through taking out of school children and bringing them every day into our education centers and working with them, not only do they become advocates for education, especially for their siblings and within their community, but actually they're going back home and they're teaching their parents some of the things that they'd learned in the classroom, especially with regards to the English language, which we teach a lot with the Syrian children because it's very important living in Lebanon to know different languages. So they actually become educators themselves and go and share that knowledge that they've learned within this time. And the last program that we're running is the Entrepreneurship program. And I'd like to take the case of, it's called Sharky Shop. You can find it online. It's an online platform which is run by one of our founders, Salim Najjar, who we've supported with training and also investing in his startup. The idea of the startup is that they put local crafts kind of created by Syrian and Jordanian artisans online and open them up to an international market. And because of our investment and just the sheer kind of motivation of this incredible young man, they've now managed to hire 40 Syrians and Jordanians to have jobs and to practice their trade and reach these goods to an international community. So hopefully I've given you a couple of very short examples of the multiplier effect here. Coming soon is our career development program, which is a partnership with the Asfari Foundation and Localize. So please keep an eye on our social media for the launch of that. And feel free to follow us on Facebook and send your questions our way. And thank you everyone for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Grace, for these insights. Next up is Gabby. The floor is yours, Gabby.
Great, thank you. And I think that's a beautiful segue, Grace, your story about George Batan. Syrian Youth Empowerment is actually one of the key partners that we have at Paper Airplanes for our youth exchange program. So as Constantine mentioned at the beginning, we work on individualized lessons online, and we do that across a couple of different programs: our English program, our youth exchange program for teenagers, our Turkish program, and our Women in Tech program. And the goal of these is to really give our students the language and technical skills that they need to be able to go on to other courses and organizations to continue pursuing their higher education and employment goals. So developing those external partnerships is key to what we do, in addition to having pathways and collaborations between our various programs. So those are kind of the two ways that I wanted to talk about collaboration and how it applies to Paper Airplanes. And some of the main things that we've seen and learned in developing these external collaborations is, first, it's really important to make sure that both partners are clear on the context. So I think it's really important to work on setting up partnerships with people in different sectors with different backgrounds. But I think what I've seen is a lot of us who are working with refugee students have a very good understanding of the challenges and barriers they face, and that's often not the case for people who haven't worked with these students before. And so when we're working to set up these partnerships, we do need to be very vocal about that and make sure that partners understand, and vice versa. If there are people in the audience who are looking to see how their organizations can support refugee students and you haven't been working with them in the past, I definitely recommend asking a lot of questions. One time this came up with Paper Airplanes was when we were partnering with a platform that was really excited about providing services to our students, but their platform didn't work in Syria, which is where 40% of our students are located. And that wasn't really something they'd ever had to think about before, since that wasn't kind of the group that they had initially been marketing towards. Something else that we've seen in establishing these external partnerships is that establishing the goals together is incredibly important. So I think a lot of us think of partnerships and collaborations as a bilateral effort, so something that's only happening between two organizations. Maybe one organization needs something and reaches out to somebody else to see if they can provide that service or help support. But it definitely, I think, is better if everyone is having a conversation about what they can get out of the partnership and what their goals are, and making sure that they're able to measure success together. So one example of that is in our youth exchange program, we work with an organization that has on-the-ground partners, on-the-ground programs, and they always involve parents in those, and they always work to gather feedback from parents, which isn't something historically that Paper Airplanes had done in our youth exchange program. But because that was something that was how our partner measured the impact of their programs, we started incorporating and bringing that to the other programs. So kind of expanding it beyond that initial one-to-one partnership to all of the organizations that work with our youth exchange program. So those are just some of the things that we've learned in establishing collaborations with other organizations. But something else that we've had a lot of experience with at Paper Airplanes is fostering collaboration amongst our different programs and teams. So we've always operated as a completely remote organization. I'd been with Paper Airplanes for 2.5 years before I met any one of my colleagues in person. So I think that has given us some insights that could help inform what a lot of people are doing now in the era of COVID. And the two main points that I wanted to share is the first is, I think, having spaces just for open conversations. I think it's very easy when you're having Skype video calls, Zoom meetings, to stick to a very structured agenda, which is great, but that doesn't really leave a lot of space for creativity, for program managers and program staff to talk about their shared goals and how to support students together. So definitely try to create spaces for that, whether by video or by chat. And then the second part is, as much as possible, get students involved in those conversations. They're the ones who we should be guiding the directions of programs, and they're a collaborator, something that both Basma and Grace were talking about, and something I'd love to discuss more in the breakout sessions, but I'll leave it at there for now.
Thank you so much, Gabi, to share those insights with us. Very interesting. We have one more speaker up before we go into the breakout sessions, and that is Laura. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So I work for Hello Europe, which is an initiative by Ashoka. For those of you who don't know, Ashoka is an organization that has existed for over 40 years now, that basically identifies and supports the world's best social entrepreneurs who are leaders with innovative ideas, which can transform broken systems for the better in fields ranging from health to human rights, education, to civic engagement, economic development, or environment. And Hello Europe is an initiative that was born in 2016 in the midst of what many politicians like calling the migration crisis, while we prefer to call it a migration management crisis, to identify and accelerate the most powerful and proven solutions to challenges surrounding migration, integration, and refugee movements. This initiative was created because we felt there was a potential, there was a source of an incredible amount of social innovations being developed in the field of migration and integration. So we decided to put them together to create a cross-border network of solutions in this field. And with the aim, ultimately, to change the paradigm around migration and integration. So what we have been doing is to match these social entrepreneurs who have come up with these ideas, to match them with partners and try to translate those innovations into policy in order to change the way in which migration is understood. Since our creation in 2016, we have expanded to 14 countries, and the work that we are doing is basically based in identifying three major challenges in this field. The first one is the scaling challenge. So we try to identify and expand the reach of the impact-driven solutions that we have identified and support them by being scaled and replicated in other countries. The second challenge is the policy one, and this is the one that I'm leading from Brussels, because it's the where the European Union institutions are based, because we identified that there's a significant gap between social innovators and the public and policy sectors. So policymakers don't know what a social entrepreneur is, and a social entrepreneur doesn't know what a policymaker is. And we felt that there's a great missed opportunity here in the sense that if we would be able to connect those two, we would be able to come up with more integral solutions. So this is what we are trying to do from Brussels, to bridge these citizen innovation ideas and policy throughout permanent exchange of tools and spaces to bring those two together. We do this, we translate these policy innovations from the field of employment and training to youth education, narrative, health, well-being, how to make migrants and refugees more entrepreneurial. Or we also work in the field of sports, legal support, food culture, and so on and so forth. And the third and last challenge, which is equally important, and it's the aim that we are trying to achieve by changing as well the policy, is to turn upside down the most popular narratives around migration, because they are dangerously incomplete, and they are basically portraying migrants and refugees as subjects of pity rather than the change makers that we believe they are. So we want to place migrants and refugees at the center of the conversations by bringing them together with policymakers in Brussels, but also other countries, but also by empowering migrant leaders and enabling them to tell their stories. At the end of the day, it's about giving them a voice. So this is what, in a nutshell, we try to do. We have created a quite wide Hello Europe community that we call, where we bring together these innovative social entrepreneurs and key stakeholders working in the field of migration and integration. And we created this space to basically giving them the possibility to present their solutions to a large group of stakeholders, which range from local authorities to international organizations, leaders in business, the media, and government, to create connections and networks. So we believe that this dialogue is, there's a need to have this permanent discussion and exchange platform to be able to achieve a more inclusive society in the future. And what we have been doing lately in the wake of COVID is trying to, our social entrepreneurs have come up with solutions in the field of migration and integration that were needed a long time ago. But now in the wake of this pandemic, it has given us an excuse to come back to these policymakers to tell them how can we use this momentum to reshuffle completely the migration and integration paradigm. So this is what we do, and we believe that the only way to achieve this change is by collaborating across sectors. So by building new spaces for collaborative thinking across the sectors and co-creating this policy. So we are trying to do this by bringing all these different actors together and collaborating as well with organizations like Grace and Gavi's one, or collaborating with grassroots or organizations or refugees and migrants themselves like BASMA. So I would be happy to give more information in case you're interested. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Laura, for sharing. I sent a little time nudge to everyone that was supposed to go to you privately. I'm sorry for that glitch. That comes with the Zoom sometimes. We will now go into the breakup sessions, and I already saw that the chat was a little bit active with some questions, and I would invite you guys to make sure to share what you want to share in these breakout sessions. We want to have an active discussion with all of you as the participants of the session. So please feel free to share these again and speak up. You can, use your microphone to talk to us rather than the chat in the breakout sessions. We have 2 questions prepared that we would like to discuss with you all. I'm going to post them now to everyone in the channel, in the chat, so you can see them. And these questions are our suggestion for discussions in the breakout rooms. And we have 50 participants, roundabout 48, 47. So I would suggest we break up into 5 groups, so that we have about 10 people per group. And then we will come back at 2:45. So we have almost 20 minutes to discuss these questions, and then we come back into the main group. Now, Alice, if you could please divide us up into breakout sessions, please. And the speakers and I will each sort of host one of the breakout sessions to make sure. Should be breaking up momentarily.
Have people received the notification for the breakout rooms?
Not me.
1 minute. Because I have assigned them. So people who should have received a little notification to go and join the breakout room. One minute.
I can see 9 participants in this, so maybe we are already in a breakout room.
I think we are in a breakout room.
All right.
Yes. Oh, but sorry, I will move one facilitator to each breakout room. That's something I wasn't careful with.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, welcome everyone. You can feel free to unmute yourself so you can talk to all of us. We want to have an open discussion round with you all in this breakout session, and we're especially interested to hear from you in regards to the discussion questions that we have that we posted in the chat. So I'll read them again. The first question is, what challenges are you facing in accessing education and jobs, and how would partnerships and advocacy potentially help you? you as in if you are a refugee or a migrant, that is, and you can also reinterpret the question accordingly if you're not. And then the second question is, again, it works the same way. How do you feel about telling your story, and how could the international community help you to have your voice heard? And now I'm especially interested to open the floor and hear from our participants.
Maybe we can also have like a quick round of introduction, no? Where we know who's sitting with us.
A very quick round.
Yeah, if you would like to do that. You already know us, so it would be your turn. But if you are shy, I mean, we can jump into the questions.
Maybe Laura, I can start with a question to you since you're here. How are you being approached by potential change makers? I can, as far as I understand, you try to reach out a lot to people, you know, to include them in processes and fostering change makers. But are you being actively approached as well from people who want to actively engage?
Well, actually, we face quite a challenge in two ways. Most of our, what we call social entrepreneurs in our jargon, we call them hellopreneurs, is that we realize that they are mostly white European social entrepreneurs. So we are actively looking for those social entrepreneurs who come from a migrant or refugee background. And we are having difficulty reaching out to them. That's why we launched a project that we call Migrant Change Makers. It's available. You can check it out in our website, where we call out to those who are innovating in different social fields and who have a migrant or refugee background. So we are trying to do this twofold, to have in our portfolio of solutions more solutions coming from migrants and refugees themselves, and also empowering them by giving them a greater voice. But sometimes it's difficult to be connected directly. So we are always open to be approached by anyone. And after this brief presentation, I received some message of interest about what we are doing. So this is precisely what we are looking for, to engage more directly with migrants and refugees themselves. Mm-hmm. We have quite an ambitious projects in mind, are creating like a advisory board composed of migrants and refugees to give them their voice and connect them directly to policymakers. But we need to find them first. So we of course we have around 20, I would say, migrant change leaders, but we are sure that there are many more out there.
No, it's, I think, at least the second time that you mentioned difficulties in connecting people a little bit, or levels, let's say. You mentioned in your input presentation as well that there's sometimes difficulty to connect social innovators with policymakers, especially when it comes to the context of refugees and migrants. What's keeping us? What's the problem there? What do you think the difficulty is? Why is that so difficult? Is it because they are not constituencies? Is it because, I don't know, I don't want to suggest anything. What do you think makes it so difficult?
I think in general, it has to do with the little knowledge that we have about how policy making works, and especially at the EU level, when it comes to the European Union institutions, it's very difficult to grasp how they work unless you have worked inside or you have a particular interest. But I would say, not only for social entrepreneurs, I mean, ordinary citizens have a difficulty understanding what the Commission does, what the European Parliament does, what the Council does. So when we have European elections coming up, it's difficult to make a choice. People hardly vote thinking of Europe. They vote according to national parameters. So I think it's no one's fault. I mean, there's a big effort being made from the European institutions trying to explain better what they do and how can they be reached out. And there has been recently, I think, more efforts being made in that direction of including more citizen voices, because there has always been kind of a democratic deficit within the institutions. I mean, they are too big, too far away, too complicated to access. So I think this is what we have encountered. So it's a matter of, and in the case of social entrepreneurship and policymaking, I think both are speaking completely different languages. So we have to translate the work that they are doing to each other's language so that they can understand. And we are experimenting with this, and now we are bringing these innovations to the attention of those policymakers. And this is starting to show some results, because what we try to do, rather than focusing on what is not working, criticizing what's not working in the field of migration and integration, we bring the solutions to the table. So we bring the fresh ideas. We are not advocating for something concrete. We are trying to bring those solutions which are ready-made and implemented and impact-driven, and they have shown results, to their attention. So we are indeed creating interest around this, but it's not only that we need to innovate in the way that the policies are being made and implemented, but also the way those public administrations work, because for them, innovating, it's something that it doesn't go very well with the understanding of a public administration. So we are trying to push this change in both directions, and trying to be able to come up with more inclusive policies in this field.
Thanks. Yeah, that's very interesting. Is there? I was wondering if there's anyone here in the group. I see we have about 11 participants, so 9 apart from Laura and I. Is there anyone here in this group who's had experiences with engaging with organizations on the ground, and maybe even has had bad experiences with it? You know, like maybe somebody or some support was needed somewhere, so an organization was consulted for support, and it turned out to be a very bad decision or a very bad experience, and maybe you have an idea of how that could be improved, or what would you do better next time? What would you do differently? Is there anyone here in the group who wants to share their experience? Did you all mute yourself? And if you want to unmute yourself, you just have to click the button on the lower left corner of your Zoom screen, and then you can talk away.
Are they all muted automatically, or maybe they have difficulties in unmuting?
Let me see if I can unmute everyone. Can you hear me, Laura?
I don't.
Okay, good.
Laura?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm going to assign you to the breakout room 3.
Okay.
Because there doesn't seem to be much conversation there, because one of the co-hosts didn't join. So would you be able to join? Do you see, if you go into menu and see access breakout room?
I'll go to menu.
And then access breakout room, I think, normally.
And where is the menu? Because I cannot see it.
I can't see it either.
That's odd. Yeah, it's just because this group is for people who haven't joined any breakout room for some reason.
But I cannot, I don't see any menu option here.
Okay, never mind. It must be a technical glitch then. Maybe if
well, we can see other people joining this room, I think.
Yeah, they are changing constantly.
The number is changing sometimes, yeah. Welcome to this breakout session anyway. Maybe another question to our participants here in the meeting. Maybe the other one was not good enough from my part. Is there anyone who's ever tried to be active as a change maker, or has any experience in participating or working with an organization, you know, trying to make a change, trying to contribute to decision making? What's your experience? Now we're getting less and less people.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I don't know. Well, in any case, in 3 minutes, we are supposed to go back, no, to the main.
Yeah, we are. Maybe we can collect a few final points that we can bring back to the main group, even though we didn't get the chance to talk much. But I feel like, you know, we can have 1 or 2 things that we can maybe report back. And Laura, I really felt, well, what resonated with me was the speaking different languages and the disconnect sometimes between people and people on the ground and, you know, the organizations where you are trying to make a difference. And yeah, that bridging effect that you guys are trying to work on, or that translation effect that you guys are working on. That was a very interesting one for me. And also, again, sort of something clicked in my head when I asked you the question. I was asking because you spoke of a disconnect between refugees and migrants, for example, but there was also a disconnect between everybody else and some of these institutions. And we tend to forget that sometimes as well, because we have that view. This is what we're discussing at the moment. So we identify like a gap of some sort, but we have to, you know, consider that this gap is there anyway for all of us as well. That was another thing. What do you think was another main point that we could report back?
I think these are the 3 ones, I think, and they can be applicable to many different organizations. Maybe ours is because the difference, but I think this is why this panel is so rich, because we have a refugee herself and then 2 organizations which are working from the field and have those connections. But I think, yeah, the disconnect in general, I think, yeah, maybe something that we could also add is about there's a lack of knowledge, to be honest. I mean, this perspective that people in different countries that have this fear about migration and refugees, while they have never been in touch with a refugee or a migrant themselves. So this, I think, it's problematic. We need more connections to create them in our societies, because we have become multicultural societies with people coming from all kinds of backgrounds, and Europe is an example of that. I mean, it's we have I don't know how many million of different migrants, and this is something that was highlighted now during this pandemic, how they stood out and they were at the forefront of combating the pandemic, because many of them work in crucial sectors of the economy, from health to caretakers and things like this. So I think now there's an opportunity as well to shift this concept that we have about what a migrant is and what a refugee is. So I think there needs to be more contact and education about that. And this is what we try to do as well with the work that we are doing, changing the narrative around them by showcasing good examples about what they are doing and how they are contributing to our societies. Because at the end of the day, if we involve them more, I mean, it will have a good impact in our societies from an economic or a cultural point of view. So I think this is why we are trying to connect them better, but it's always complicated to reach out to them, to be honest. And it's a pity, because there are so many, I believe, or we have such an interesting, diverse audience today in the panel. So I hope we will be able to connect with those after this event. I don't know if you're planning next steps on how to connect to your community. I believe that you have a very rich community of people that would be a lot of interest to us to keep in touch with.
I just heard that we have a hand raise from Razan. Razan, what would you like to share with us?
Yes, thank you. I don't think we have enough time, but like I had a question for Laura. How can we go, or how can we deal with the idea of that in the NGO world, they are more like working competitively instead of collaboratively. So it's like there is a sense of this is my achievement, this is my program, this is my funding, it's like taking the credit instead of sharing this. So how can we go about this? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Razan. I think this is a very pertinent one, and we see that a lot of NGOs are doing very similar things here, and we are kind of, at the end of the day, doing the same things. So we need to cooperate. I mean, we are this kind of bridge builder, so we would be happy to channel the things that you're doing in a different way without having to compete against each other. But there's a need for a more neutral platform where everyone can come together from different sectors to collaborate.
I think everyone's joining back from their breakout sessions from the looks of it. I hope it worked well. I hope it worked well for everyone. And I see we have, yeah, it seems like everyone's back. So let's go into the reporting. I can just start because I'm already speaking to report back from our session. It was Laura and I who were in the same session. So Laura, please feel free to add any points that you also had. But for us, there was a little bit of a focus because Laura was in the session as well on, again, the relationship between policymaking level and institutions and people and organizations on the ground, and a possible disconnect that we have. Laura mentioned it multiple times in her input as well. There is a little bit of a disconnect sometimes because these levels speak different languages. People on the ground and organizations on the ground speak a very different level from institutions on a higher European level. So it's very important to do that translation work. And then for me, a very resonant point was the deficit of these organizations to meet the requirements and needs of people on the ground. And we always seem to think that it's especially hard for, let's say, refugees and migrants to have that connect, but it's hard for everyone else. So there's a deficit or a disconnect to everyone else as well. So that only amplifies some of the challenges that refugees and migrants may have even more. And then lack of knowledge as to, this is with relation to the European institutions, a huge lack of knowledge as to who and what migrants actually are and what their skills and capabilities are. And we need to do more of getting to know the skills and the opportunity. So that's the 3 points that I had. Laura, do you have anything to that?
It was perfect. Thank you.
I'm sure it wasn't, but let's go on to the group of Grace. I just see you there on my screen. What about your group?
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, we had a lovely, I think far too short discussion. I could have quite happily, I think we all could have spent an hour in there chatting away, and a huge thank you. I didn't get chance to say thank you to my participants because we were cut short. So unfortunately, we mainly focused on some of the challenges that the different participants were facing. And we had participants from Yemen, from Turkey, from Syria, and we were talking a little bit about what the challenges are, kind of resettling in a new country and accessing education and employment. I would hire the main challenges, and I think the first one we all managed to agree on was learning a language, and I'll come back to this in just a second, but this is, I think everybody pretty much shared that's a huge challenge. The second would be bureaucracy and navigating the system and just the high expectations living in a resettled country and trying to meet all of the criteria required and the constant need. And I also speak from experience because I was working with a lot of refugees and asylum seekers in France, and the expectations were huge for the documentation. And the last one was finding a job in the third country especially, and that relates very closely with language skills. And finding a job also relates very closely to, relates very closely to some financial challenges as well. We fortunately had since I'm in the same team, it's probably just managed to mute somebody, sorry for that. We talked a little bit around the opportunities, and unfortunately we only had one main opportunity, but that was shared by one of our participants who had managed to find some volunteer work, and through volunteer work improved her English skills, and then found a job at the end and shared a little bit about her job as well. So I think that that's a recommendation. If you can't work, trying to find some volunteer work to gain experience and gain a network as well. And I'd just like to say to everybody, please keep telling your stories, keep sharing these, because it really helps us as practitioners in the sector to find out what we can do to help you. And I'd love, just because language was such a challenge, I'd love if Gabby could take a couple of seconds as well to explain what paper airplanes do, because they're doing some fantastic work around language learning, and then maybe we can share a link in the chat.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Grace. I can only emphasize that. Gabby, why don't you go next? There's a good segue.
Yeah, so happy at Paper Airplanes, we do one-on-one individualized language lessons. So our main focus is English. That's our largest program. And we have students join the program. They go through a training and a placement test, and then we match them with a tutor to go through our curriculum. And the benefit of one-to-one for us is that students can really focus on the skills that they need, whether that's like academic writing, their speaking and listening skills. And then there is a lot of flexibility because it is one-to-one. We know a lot of students have come to our program because in-person classes are at times that don't work for them. They can't get to the center where the classes are held. So even with just a smartphone, not even a computer, students can join our classes. So a bit about Paper Airplanes. Would love to segue into what my group was talking about, since I think there were a lot of overlaps in terms of the challenges that we're facing, and we started addressing maybe some opportunities within that. So one challenge that was brought up was how to build a network as someone who's been resettled in a country. You work to develop your network in one country, and then you leave and kind of have to start from scratch. So how can we as organizations help students, potential workers, develop those networks? And then something else that we began talking about, which I think really fits with the theme of our session, is as organizations providing education services, a lot of what we do is prepare students for employment. But then the reality is that in a lot of cases, students can't work legally in the countries where we're operating. And so how do we do a better job collaborating with government to make sure that there are opportunities for students and graduates of programs once they have gained those skills and are ready to enter the job market? So those are a bit of the challenges in terms of things that we can do moving forward. One topic that really came out was the importance of multilateral partnerships. A lot of our organizations do different things. They overlap in terms of how we can support refugees and migrants. So really making sure that we're coming together. And one idea that arose from that conversation was really having those trendsetter organizations, the ones who are leaders in this space, making sure that that is happening and that they're moving towards that model of multilateral partnerships. And we finished up the conversation talking about this conference, about Amplify Now and having it be a more regular occurrence. And there was definitely agreement that this is a great way to convene everyone working in this space, and especially if moving forward we can bring in more politicians and more individuals involved in policy, so that there can be that transfer of knowledge and some sort of understanding about what the challenges and barriers are.
Hannes just let me know that we had a hand raise from Buema. Is that correct? Please feel free to speak up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, my name is Buema Matata. I'm from Uganda. I'm also I have two questions to Bella. Thank you for the opportunities and for this platform we are using. As a refugees of I can say in Uganda, my experience, I stay as a refugee here in Uganda. I can say we have some challenges whereby we can say as a group we can also focus how to make it better, because we have a problem actually. I'm helping as a humanitarian. I'm helping as a child protection with the children. Actually, I want to ask a question seriously, because these people, they give the refugees an opportunity to go back to school and also give it back to their community. But the problem is one, even if they normally create awareness, getting funds and enjoy themselves, but we have a problem as a community, as a refugees community, because people here are dying seriously. Because if you give refugees education, after education, and you just leave him in the streets, even if because if you are hosted in one of the country, you cannot get a job for, like, in the government. You're supposed to work around those humanitarian agencies, whereby they look for themselves to look for a job and they search. But there's even some companies, the same organization, which is going to give scholarship to them. They say, no, you are not eligible to work. You are not eligible to do anything. Now, me, I was asking myself, what is important of that education? Creating opportunity for refugees. How can we do it better? Because if you give one refugees education up to the university, up to get masters, and is really getting an opportunity to compete with Uganda, because even if you go to America, you come to Uganda, there's no a class for refugees and a class for nationals or for host people. All of them, they sit one exam, and if it comes of terms of job, they're supposed to compete as a person, and they study and they do the right things, but it's not the right things. For example, Window International Uganda, they give the refugees that the opportunity, that scholarship, everything. They wasted a lot of millions to give those refugees. But after giving those refugees, you hosted those university money. After that university, the same person came back in the settlement or in the camp, searching for job. They say, no, you're not eligible to work because you're a refugee. You discriminate others. But I don't think if you can give someone education, opportunity to change his life and his community, then you come back and you say, no, this one is going to discriminate other person. Really, we need to fight. We need to give chance to these refugees. In this time of Corona, COVID-19, myself, I'm doing masters in public health, majoring in health promotion. We have a problem. People are dying. For them, they are looking for funds, and they're moving in vehicles. The people are suffering. If you go to FDP, people are like dying. And they reduce the money. They reduce that because of there's no fund in the World Food Program. They said, but they can give level of support to support themselves. I was want to talk to Bella. Bella is he works with Ashoka. Actually, her presentation was better, and I want him to focus. Let him to be a fighter. We don't make all of them to be a fighter, but we can also do better to sensitize. If you educate a person, give also a chance so that another person who will come behind, who also can get something. He will be knowing, yeah, this one, he was a refugee. He went back to school in USA or in Canada or here in Uganda, but after
Buema, just
Uganda,
very quickly,
after
thank you,
the university is
thank
here
you so
working
much for
as assistant. We don't want them to be a country.
Buema, I'm going to intervene here now because we are running out of time a little bit, and we still have to go to Basma to visit her, to hear about her breakout session. But thank you so much for sharing your your view, and I think it's especially important to this is why we want to hear your stories and want you to share, so that we can do how to do a better job. We can know how to do a better job of responding to that. Basma, if you can hear me, what about your group? What about your breakout session?
Basma, you're muted in case you haven't realized.
Again,
yeah.
now?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Sorry, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for all the participants in our group. It was really very rich and insightful discussion. We discussed about the barriers to education and job accessibility as well. And a colleague from Bangladesh, she was mentioning about the cultural and socio-cultural barriers for adolescent girls after the age of 12 and for women in order to access educational opportunities and also job opportunities. And in addition also to the lack of accessibility to the parents themselves and to the girls themselves in order to explain or to mobilize them for the importance of accessing higher education or jobs. In addition, also one of the barriers that refugees are facing or as forcibly displaced as well, because they mentioned that they are not considered refugees in Bangladesh, the lack of government support and they are not allowed to work or to contribute. And also we do have a lack of opportunities to markets and a lack of opportunities to practice after they get certain types of training. Also difficulty in finding a particular kind of trainings programs for the forcibly displaced people in Bangladesh. Also very important idea was mentioning that they used to try different participatory approaches with women and girls in order to understand what type of training programs they are interested and they are beneficial to their communities and to their themselves as well. But they mentioned that always women cannot, or they are not able to think outside the box because of the social and cultural barriers. So most of the suggestion for training is about like food preparation and very cultural type of trainings that they are requesting because of the social cultural barriers of women not going outside and they cannot have access to education or job opportunity. Very interesting two questions was mentioned about from a colleague who is establishing or having NGO supporting refugees in UK was, what is needed in education for refugees? We have to ask ourselves this question, and what should be done actually in order to support refugees? And he mentioned one of the opportunities in Bangladesh in order to work in the sustainable development goals, that we have to change and to shift the narrative and the language when we discuss with government and actors. And they are working currently with something called the blue and green economy in order to enable these people, especially the forcibly displaced people, to be engaged in the market and in the trainings. Also the second question, and the barriers also of the community leaders, which was very interesting. The barriers of community leaders to have accessibility to refugees and to speak on behalf of refugees and to do the advocacy role. So one of the community leaders was mentioning that he's really facing difficulty in the accessibility to refugees. The second question about telling of the stories and the importance of the storytelling and what's the role of the international community. And I really like this input. One colleague was mentioning that refugees and asylum seekers or forcibly displaced people are feeling exhausted because of they are telling their stories in a continuous way and in a multiple ways without seeing any results happen. And this is really making them feeling exhausted and maybe sometimes hopeless. And the second point was the recognition. We need the recognition that these people are feeling exhausted, and we need the recognition also about the importance of sharing this feeling and the importance of sharing their stories to create advocacy. Also, some of the suggestion was, we need to tell the stories. It's very important to tell these stories, but we need to say at least small actions and small results quickly to build trust. which I find it very important and very necessary as well, because trust is very important when people want to share their stories. And I will end one takeaway, big question from one of the community leader who was attending our session. What can or how can refugee leaders from the community access donors and different platforms in order to get help and to get support to help their community back then and to amplify the stories? So this was one takeaway and one big question from one of the community leaders in our session. Thank you so much, and very happy to get in touch or connected after this session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Basma. We have, before I close the session, we had one more hand raise that I wanted to honor, and this is Alain. Alain, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Konstantin, for giving me this opportunity. I know I don't have more time to talk about everything, but I just wanted to go specifically and answer to Boema. Boema and everybody, I understand your frustration as refugees. You know, I was in the same situation. I'm still in the same situation, and it's very frustrating to see people going to school and then coming back without getting, you know, opportunities for job. However, I would like to encourage you as a community leader and tell you the most important thing is the baggage they give you, the education they give you, and I feel like when providing education for refugees is the first step towards refugee self-reliance, because it helps them to break the chains and finding their ways of doing things by their own. I think it's enough for refugees to keep being, you know, parasites. And one of the reasons I'm saying this, Malawi, where I was living, is one of the countries with so many restrictions. But how we break the chains, we just realized that we could do something for us to be self-reliant, and we started an initiative in arts. And we could sell our artworks everywhere around the world without any donor, without anybody. We could do everything by our own without waiting for donors. And I guess that's what I can encourage you, Boema. You guys should start some initiatives, look for donors, go online, write proposals, look for opportunities. You have already school, you have a master's, write proposals, look for opportunities, and I guess your initiatives are going to be heard. We pass on Fox TV, and our documentaries were gone around the world without any donor, without anybody, and I guess that's the most important. So thank you so much for all the organizations that are providing education for refugees. That's a first step, and you are doing great for them, for us, and that's most important. I came up with a very small education in Africa, and now I'm getting good marks on my university. I'm doing Metropolitan University here in Minnesota, where there have been demonstrations, and I'm doing great with what I came from in Africa, and I guess that was a good step. So thank you so much for these opportunities, and I will appreciate if this kind of initiative can continue so we can be sharing ideas, platforms, and different stuff, and I guess that's the first step. Thank you, Konstantin.
Thank you so much, Alan. That was the perfect closing statement, I think, for this session. Thank you for your encouraging words and for sharing your story with us. This is wonderful to hear, and yeah, I can only amplify that for everyone else. So thanks for taking it. I'm glad that we went a little bit over time for this, so that's good.
Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to everyone for participating in our session today. Special thanks to our 4 speakers, Basma, Grace, Laura, and Gabby. And yeah, I think from our perspective, coming from, you know, working with organizations that are trying to make a difference in the field, we can only amplify what you guys have said today to keep hearing from you and keep knowing about your stories and needs. So thank you so much. If you want to keep in touch, find all of us on the website of the Amplify Now conference. You can find our LinkedIn profiles there if you want to stay in touch with the speakers. And this session will be closed now. I wish you all a great rest of the day and a great rest of the conference if you plan on going to other sessions. Have fun, have a great day, and thanks for participating, and goodbye to wherever you are. See you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.